Despite Shedeur Sanders' memorable performance on Friday night, not much has changed in the Browns quarterback competition just yet. We'll talk about it coming up next in the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Monday's practice showed us that things are generally still the same in the Browns quarterback competition, but stay tuned and I'll explain why. Despite what Browns quarterback history suggests, it is okay to be excited about Shedeur Sanders and the potential that he showed on Friday. Plus, the feel-good story of camp came to an unfortunate end on Monday. I do want to thank you for being on every day here at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. Bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's totally free to you. Just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and of course at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. You can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of that conversation every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And I said what I said in the intro. It remains true. Not much has changed in this quarterback competition, despite the fact that Shedeur put on a great performance on Friday for everybody watching, and obviously the Browns coaches and executives. And I think what it tells me is it confirms what I already sort of said over the weekend. The Browns have a process here. They have a process that they're going through to try to develop certain guys, the rookies, get certain guys ready for the season, the veterans, and they are sticking to that plan as of now. Now, that can change, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But essentially what Monday's practice looked like from a quarterback competition standpoint, we saw Joe Flacco handle all the first-team reps in 11-on-11 drills. The only session he didn't handle first-team reps in was the 7-on-7s, which saw a heavy dose of Kenny Pickett basically handling the first-team offense. He actually had a really good session in that setting. He was 5 for 5 and threw 3 touchdown passes in it. Some of his better passes of camp came in that session as well. And that is still what Kenny Pickett is limited to at this juncture, given his injury, the hamstring that he's dealing with, and continues to be a problem for him. And now the big question for him that sort of lingers here is, what does that mean for his involvement in these joint sessions coming up on Wednesday and Thursday? Because at the beginning of this entire thing, many of us felt that Kenny Pickett had like an inside, maybe not an inside track, because Flacco kind of has the inside track understanding and knowing the offense better, but that he was in line from the Browns' perspective to maybe be the starter, and they really liked what he brought to the table, which is why they traded for him. And that's kind of gone to the wayside now just because of the injury, where he hasn't been very involved. He seems like at this point he's a non-factor in the competition as a whole because of this injury, and it doesn't sound like it's going to necessarily solve itself, and he'll be more active out there on Wednesday and Thursday. But we'll have to see what that looks like when we get to Philly here coming up in the coming days. I know there was the comments made on the broadcast, as I talked about, from Joe Thomas, that Kenny Pickett could be out another couple weeks, and right now Kevin Stefanski gave us the very ominous update of progressing, and we'll see, just pretty much his go-to answer for all these guys when they're injured. But it is something that is still sorting itself out, something that is still unknown at this time. And if he doesn't participate in these joint practices this week, I think he's going to be largely out of the picture, and he kind of already is largely out of the picture when it comes to this competition as a whole. And so that set the tone for Flacco to take the first-team reps during 11-on-11s once again. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point that they view him as the lead horse in this race. And then the rookies, the way it was split up, there was 2 sessions that Gabriel followed Flacco with the 2s, and there was 2 sessions where Shedeur followed Flacco with the 2s in those 11-on-11s. There was 4 total sessions in total. They did sort of like a goal line setting early. Then they did like a more hurry-up offense style. Then they did a full field. Then they went back to like a red zone. And it was Gabriel to start things off, Gabriel to end things following Flacco. And then the 2 middle sessions were Shedeur following Flacco. And like I said, the Browns clearly have a process here that they are sticking to. And my guess, but here's the thing. Right now, that's all fine and good. The joint practices, though, are where things could change. How they handle the reps this week, what guys like, what Shedeur looks like in those settings with the reps that he gets against, again, the defending Super Bowl champions. What Dillon Gabriel looks like in those settings against the defending Super Bowl champions. Those will be things that the Browns are heavily considering. And I think by and large, you're going to get a preseason game on Saturday between those two teams where it is Gabriel and Sanders handling and really being sort of the guys starting in that game. I don't think we're going to see Joe Flacco again. They're going to continue to put him in bubble wrap. Even if Kenny Pickett makes it back for the joint practices, they're going to, again, put him in bubble wrap and not put him out there in a game setting like that where he could risk getting injured because they don't want to risk anything else for him for the rest of this preseason. And so it's going to be Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders starting that game on Saturday with Tyler Huntley sort of rounding things out at the end of the game, I would imagine, unless they give them each a half, which I guess we'll have to see how they handle that. My guess is that if Gabriel's ready to go, he will start on Saturday, and then Shedeur will sort of follow that. And that, again, just speaks to the process that they've gone through to this point where they really like Dillon Gabriel, as we've made it very clear. And we'll be honest about it to this degree. Like, Shedeur got his, he got the 45 plays on Friday. He got a chance to really showcase what he can do. Giving Gabriel a chance to sort of show what he can do and either sink or swim is I think, a fair way to go about it this time of year, just to sort of give it a whirl and see what it looks like with him. I'm assuming that's how they're going to handle things this week. I don't necessarily expect either of those guys to take first-team reps on Wednesday or Thursday with the Eagles because I just think they're locked in with Flacco handling those for the 11-on-11 things unless Pickett's back. And so I don't think either rookie is going to be doing a lot of the first-team stuff on Wednesday or Thursday, probably not any of it at all. And it'll set the tone for those two guys or set the stage for those two guys to be your starters or your two quarterbacks primarily in Saturday's preseason game. And you'll get the first sort of audition for Dillon Gabriel the same way we got the first audition for Shedeur last week as well. Again, that's my sort of read on the situation. We'll see what it all looks like. For what it's worth, Gabriel was in those 11-on-11s today. He was back in that from his hamstring issue. But Kevin Stefanski made it clear that they were sort of monitoring him as they go, and they're still sort of keeping in the back of their mind here, or in the front of their mind really, that he's dealing with a tweaked hamstring, and they don't want to put too much on his plate. And so you did see him taking and handling less reps at practice today than you probably have seen throughout other portions of camp where he was doing a little bit more or he had a little bit more on his plate, and he was honestly in those settings taking first-team reps as well. So that was kind of the breakdown of how it all went today. Again, didn't feel like a lot had changed in general. But I'll say this. Yes, it's the preseason. And yes, Shedeur had a solid performance on Friday. If you're excited about the potential that he showed, that's okay. And don't let other people tell you not to be excited. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year because NFL kickoff is almost here. And that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. My most competitive fantasy league is on Yahoo. It's the most fun I have playing fantasy football. My friends and I are enjoying playing it. It's competitive as hell in this league. And you can enjoy it too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your 1 millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team each week gets eliminated until there's just one team left standing. With the season just around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and try out this new mode. Or if you're more into the classics, you can still play the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, so listen, I get it. Browns history suggests that getting too excited or, being discouraged, I guess more so being excited about a quarterback this time of year, putting on, showing out, playing a good game, putting up good stats is, silly and largely irresponsible to some. But at the same time, I'm gonna get this clear out of the gate here. Like, there is nothing wrong with feeling like Friday's debut for Shedeur Sanders could be the start of something special in general. And I think it goes back to the fact that, like, Shedeur is a talented player. And I get that some people want to box him in with, using history against him and pointing out things like, well, hey, the odds of a 5th-round pick becoming a franchise quarterback are extremely low. Even though we know he was better than a 5th-round pick, and he should have gone at least on day 2, even though we know that the people are going to use the 5th-round pick thing against him. I also understand where it's like, well, it's the preseason. There's not a lot of game planning going on. Those things are all important context. And those are things that, by the way, I tried to convey on Friday and Friday night and talking about the Shedeur Sanders situation and his performance. It's just like the idea that, yeah, like there's still room for him to grow, but that doesn't mean you can't be excited about what we saw. I'm not saying you have to crown him right now, but the idea that, and frankly, like, even he alluded to the idea that, like, he felt like he left some things on the table out there and that he's going to continue to get better and grow. And that's what you would want from a potential franchise quarterback, is that they're always looking for ways to get better. And I think you see that with him. So I understand where, yes, there is room to, temper your expectations to a degree and not be too hyperbolic over a preseason performance. But at the same time, like, it is understandable to see the aura that Shedeur Sanders has, see what he brings to the table from a standpoint of just like the person, the player that he is, and what he what he represents, and just the celebrity that comes with him, and then see that performance on Friday, and feel like, man, there's something here. Though, like, it's a pretty understandable thing to get caught up in and feel like, excitement in some way that maybe this guy could actually end up being the answer. And I think that's what's important here. Like, for those who liked what they saw, and rightfully, on Friday, and are hopeful he can be the franchise guy, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've said from the beginning of the Shedeur Sanders conversation, dating back to January when the pre-draft process really started, that I felt he could be a perfect fit here for this franchise, in this offense for Kevin Stefanski, with the accuracy he displays, with the fact that he ran a play action. He did a lot of play action stuff in college as well. And that he can be successful from the pocket, all those different things. Like, I felt good about Shedeur Sanders as a prospect coming in from a fit perspective for the Cleveland Browns. And so that's why I said on Friday, like, what we saw from him didn't surprise me, because I thought in this offense, with Kevin Stefanski giving him plays that he knew he could be comfortable with and that he would execute appropriately and well, that he was going to show that he could be successful. And that was what Friday was. Like, even if that, yes, largely, like, that was just step one, right? He knows there's things to work on. He doesn't have to be crowned the franchise quarterback today. And that's where I would tell people, like, if it's okay to have some, it's okay to leave Friday and want to still see more from Shedeur. That's totally fine. I think that perspective is great as well. Because even he admitted, like, yeah, there's things I still want to get better at. And the Browns have already shown that they're going to keep giving him time to get comfortable and get better in this offense and get more comfortable just in general in the NFL. And so that's all fine and good. Like, they are being patient with him. And there's nothing wrong with that in the grand scheme of things, given how many times the team screwed up quarterbacks in the past. But the talent is there. And the excitement is there because he's a polarizing player. And, man, like, those two things together give you this powder keg that did explode on Friday with so many, reactions to what we witnessed, what we watched. And listen, it is the preseason. There's been plenty of quarterbacks that have looked good in the preseason. DTR, for example, had a great preseason his rookie year. And I think people were excited about what he could be. Similarly, a 5th-round pick. And there was some buzz there of, like, maybe this guy could be something. And then we saw last year that he was just never going to be that guy. I think Shedeur is different, because I do think it is a talent that was drafted inappropriately. He should have been drafted much higher. We know that. And I believe that if you're a fan who watched that and was excited, or a fan that wasn't sure about Shedeur, but now you feel like excited about the idea that, hey, what he showed me the other night was poise. What he showed me the other night was the guy that can run this offense. What he showed me the other night was that elite accuracy that he possesses and the ability to read a defense and make some big-time throws. And now all of a sudden you're like, maybe there's something to this. That's totally fine. And there's no gatekeeping fandom in the grand scheme of things. Like, ultimately, this franchise hasn't had a quarterback to really get excited about and advertise as like the franchise guy or really put on a pedestal as the franchise guy in 3 decades. Baker was on the precipice of that before everything that transpired with him, and then of course the fallout, and then you trade him and you end up with Deshaun, and all that sort of has gone with along with that since then. But they have 5 quarterbacks on the roster right now. Like, this season is supposed to be a big nothing burger. Vegas is predicting 5.5 wins max for this team. They're predicting, so some places are predicting even less than that. Like, it's not like fans are I think most fans in this fan base, and maybe you're included in this, are going into the season feeling like, they kind of know what to expect. There is this level-headedness to where this team is at. Yes, there's some talented players and pieces, but there's also a lot of young pieces that are sort of coming into their own. There's a lot of rookies that are trying to make an immediate impact, Shedeur Sanders included. And so if the worst thing that if God forbid they see a quarterback execute the offense at a high level and play well as a rookie the way he did on Friday, and they get excited about the possibilities that they have finally figured this out. I mean, think about it. 3 decades worth of trying and hoping and wishing that a franchise quarterback would emerge somewhere and that this franchise would finally get it right. They'd finally find that guy. I can't get mad or push back on anybody who saw what happened Friday and got excited about it and felt like it was a sign that maybe he could be the guy. And I heard from some fans who flat out said, like, I wasn't sold on Shedeur. Friday changed my opinion. Now I want to see more. And that's probably the best. Like, that's the best outcome you can get from Friday night if you want to see Shedeur Sanders have success with this team is the fans who, were sort of became more sold on him as a player based off of what you saw on Friday and realized, okay, maybe I need to rethink this thing, and then got excited because of the potential that exists there. That's the best outcome anybody could ask for from a player, even in the preseason. I get it. They're not scheming things up. They're not defenses aren't trying to like take certain things away. There's no game plan that really goes into this. But as far as a debut goes, I'm not letting anybody try to rain on the parade of Browns fans that are excited about the possibilities with Shedeur, whether they're in this fan base, whether they're outside this fan base, and they're trying to downplay it by saying it's the preseason and this quarterback had a better preseason debut or this quarterback just played better in general in the preseason. Doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is Shedeur Sanders, amidst everything going on outside, the outside noise, amidst plenty of people hating on him, amidst, a quarterback competition where he's been 4th on the depth chart, he went out, he put really good tape out there. He showed you that he can play at this level. He showed you what he's capable of. And that is ultimately like the spark for any fan of any team in this league getting excited about the potential of the most important position on this field in this game finally being figured out. For a franchise that hasn't been able to figure it out, I don't blame anybody for getting excited. Bottom line is you don't have to crown him after one preseason game by any stretch. You can have a level-headed, expectation of like, I want to see more. That's totally fine if that's how you feel. But you can't also get mad at people for being excited, even if it is the preseason, because how long this fan base has longed for a franchise QB, to even get a taste of that potentially being the case with Shedeur and everything that comes with him, the celebrity of it all. I get why it's an exciting thing, and this is coming from somebody who obviously has been high on Shedeur from the beginning. I always felt like this was in there, and now that we got to see it play out on the field, I think is reason to be excited about what's to come. And we'll find out more in Philly with the joint practices and, of course, on Saturday when they play Philly in that preseason game. And him and Dylan Gabriel, I expect to handle the majority of that setting. The feel-good story of camp is over. No, it's not Shedeur Sanders. It was another player who Shedeur Sanders had a pretty good connection with. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster than ever before. Prices actually drop as you get closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. Last year, I went to Gametime for the first time. I bought tickets for my wife and I to go see Ohio State, Michigan. The results were unfortunate, but we did get to say that we saw the eventual national champs in person, and with their transparent ticket pricing and panoramic seat views, Gametime instantly became my go-to app for buying tickets from that entire experience. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, so the Shedeur Sanders story is obviously the biggest story coming out of Browns training camp, but I think the feel-good story of training camp from the beginning to now has been Luke Floria, the Kent State grad, who is also a local kid here in Northeast Ohio, and, I mean, he has balled out. He has been on the receiving end of a number of plays from all four quarterbacks. He's been out there every single day, making his presence felt, and really forcing the issue on what I thought was going to sort of end up being at least a discussion that he should make the 53-man roster. He's too undersized. I think ultimately he probably was just going to end up being a practice squad guy, and he had earned that because of how he was playing. He had the incredible catch on Friday night, that one-hander reaching out on the pass from Shedeur, which was brilliant. And that's actually the play that he got hurt on and sort of came up lame, grabbing at his hamstring. And we all kind of wondered, like, what it meant. Was he okay? He said after the game he was okay, which led me to believe, like, okay, not that serious. He's going to be back. It's all good. And then today we got in for practice. Kevin Stefanski gave sort of an ominous comment about Dylan Gabriel. He did talk about Dylan Gabriel's hamstring as well, but about Luke Floria, where he said, like, an update's coming, but he did consider it serious. And then we found out about 15 minutes later that they were waiving him, making some ancillary moves to the roster, adding a couple guys, and they did waive Luke Floria to sort of make that happen. It's an unfortunate outcome for what has, again, been the feel-good story of one of the best stories during training camp, is just how he has performed and met this moment. Coming from Kent State, the worst team in football the last couple years, and to perform this way and really force the issue where, hey, I belong. I deserve to be in the conversation. Like, I had joked about him and Gage Larvadan basically being in, competing with each other for that last roster spot on the 53-man roster, or that last wide receiver spot, and maybe being bubble guys sort of together here. And so, yeah, it's fascinating how that's played out. And it was a lot of fun watching the ride, if you will, of Luke Floria and to follow his story just in general. And it stinks that it has to end with him being waived here. Now, we don't know. Like, they said it was serious. Does that mean his season's over? I'm not sure. Like, this might have just been like, we got to make a move now, and we'll try to grab him back later and add him to the practice squad. There's always sorts of conversations you have with a guy that you really were liking, or that you were that was putting on a show or doing certain things during training camp or practice during the season or whatever. So I'm imagining those types of things are happening, where they had a conversation with him, and if there's a possibility he'll be back, I could see them probably adding him to their practice squad. But it brings an end to a story that everybody, I think, especially locally, was following. And along the lines of like the 53-man roster, like I ultimately said, I think he probably was going to end up as a practice squad guy and not in the 53. But, him and Gage Larvadan doing what they were doing, it felt like it could come down to one of those two being the eventual player that ended up getting that last spot in the wide receiver room if they do end up keeping 6. And now what I think is interesting is if as I continue to look at this wide receiver room in general, there are 5 guys I feel pretty good about making this team, and they're obvious. Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash has had a really good camp. I don't see him going anywhere. Obviously, Deontay Johnson. And the last one is DeAndre Carter, who they're probably going to keep around as their return specialist. But what's interesting about that is Larvadan has also shown some stuff as a returner. He had a nice run back, a nice return on Friday night in that Panthers game. So maybe that, changes the math a little bit here. And Larvadan also is undersized as well. So I'm not saying like it's a guarantee that he's going to make the roster, but some guys just like they ball out so much that you can't not let them make this 53-man roster when it's all said and done. And so I'm wondering if now the Browns, because it's going to be sort of like this guys in the roster bubble situation after those top 5 receivers, I wonder if they make Larvidan a practice squad guy and they only keep 5 receivers. And part of the reason I've thought about this more is because, again, 12 personnel, very heavy in Kevin Stefanski's offense. Maybe you feel like you don't need 6 wide receivers. And honestly, and we'll revisit the keeping 4 quarterback conversation yet again tomorrow, because I actually think I have had to start to change my tune on it a little bit. And so we'll get there. But the keeping 4 quarterback conversation, I think if that's how the Browns go about this, I do wonder if that wide receiver room is where you find the extra roster spot to keep a 4th guy, because you might not need to keep 6 wide receivers with this team, knowing they're going to run more 12 personnel and just understanding like the talent discrepancy that happens after those top 4 to 5 guys. And so I could see that sort of being the case as well, where maybe they decide, you know what, let's just keep 5. Let's not worry about a 6th. And let's frankly just keep these 4 quarterbacks around. We'll talk about that some more, but obviously an unfortunate end to Luke Floria's training camp here with the Browns, which has been a great story to follow. He had that one-handed catch the other night. I was looking forward to asking him about it, and now I won't get a chance to because he's been waived. But the Gage Larvidan, we can pivot that feel goodness over to Gage Larvidan, who's also had a tremendous camp himself and made a couple more plays today, as well as in the preseason game Friday as well. It's another episode Down with the Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, where betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being on every day or at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.